to Menu Talk, a podcast from Restaurant Business and Nation's Restaurant News. I'm Pat Kobe, Senior Menu Editor of Restaurant Business and co-host of the podcast. I'm chatting with Isabel Coss, Executive Chef at Pascual, a contemporary Mexican restaurant in Washington, D.C. Isabel is originally from Mexico City and grew up studying ballet as a way to get into an art school where she could eventually pursue film. But once there, she realized she wanted to do something else entirely and became passionate about food. At just 17, she landed an externship with Pujol, one of Mexico City's top Michelin-starred restaurants. And she discovered that her ballet training was a real plus. It helped her build up stamina and move around the kitchen. Isabel developed a passion for the pastry station and worked diligently to hone her bread baking skills at Pujol, which eventually led her to New York City as a pastry chef at Empeyon and later Cosme, two of the best Mexican restaurants in the city at the time. In 2020, she moved to Washington, D.C. and overhauled the pastry program at Lutèce, a notable French bistro. Currently at Pascual, Isabel creates items for both the sweet and savory sides of the menu. Her culinary skills have landed her on lists like Food and Wine's Best New Chefs in America, and as a semifinalist for a James Beard Best Chef Mid-Atlantic Award. Listen as Isabel describes her love affair with masa, what she's cooking and baking now, and what's next in her culinary journey. Welcome, Isabel. So nice to meet you.
Thank you. I'm so nice to meet you. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Well, let's begin by you telling me a little bit about your culinary journey, because I understand you studied to become a ballerina and now you transitioned to become a pastry chef. So how did that happen?
Yes, I'm originally from Mexico City. I was born and raised there. And my family is very keen to arts. You know, my mom put us through music school when we were young. Ballet was like a big part, like movement for my mom. She wanted us to kind of like get exposed to like art and like all of these approaches. And I'm sure it wasn't easy, but like, you know, I think as a mom, she would take us every day, have to pick us from school, get changed in the car. It was a whole thing to make it happen, but I appreciate it because I think it taught me movement. And yeah, I studied to be a ballerina. I wanted to study my first career choice. I wanted to do films. I wanted to be a movie maker. I wanted to tell stories, you know? And in Mexico, the way it works, if you wanna, there's this very famous school that teaches arts. And if you want to join that school, it's easier if you are good at another art. So ballet was the way to get me into that school. I actually has never told this story, but ballet was the way to get me into this school. And it took years, you know, years and training and all of that. And I made it into the school. I actually got accepted into the school.
Wow.
And the day I got accepted, I was like, Mom, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And she was like, What? My mom like cry, you know? And I'm like, No, Mom, I don't think I can continue doing this. Because I knew I wanted to do something else. I was starting to get excited about food. I was starting to get excited about like other careers. So, but I always took like ballet with me, you know? And I think that's why for me it was so easy to jump into kitchen because I right away, I remember my first day as a cook. I started cooking professionally when I was 17. I work at a restaurant in Mexico City called Pujol. Well, I was trailing. I was just, you know, I wasn't working because back like it was just an externship or, you know. And I remember my first day, I was super young and inspired. And I remember seeing the whole kitchen and I'm like, this is just like a ballet play, you know? There's energy, there's movement, there's music, there's personalities all in one little room. And I was like, I'm where I want to be. And I
Wow,
haven't stopped cooking since then.
yeah, that's a great story. I mean, I'm sure ballet gave you a lot of stamina too to be able to stand in the kitchen all day. And
Discipline,
yeah,
discipline. I think ballet gives you, you
right.
know,
So, how did you pick up your baking skills?
Yes, you know, actually, the way I pick up baking, when I started cooking, I think I was very young And I was also like, it was Mexico, you know, this was like many years ago, like 15 years ago. So I think like there was also like a little bit of idea of like, you're a woman, you go to the pastry side. So
Oh,
I started in kitchens, and it was like, you go to pastry, you go to pastry, you're a girl, you go to pastry, you know? But in pastry, I realized like in that station, I loved it. I was like, whoa, this is so much beautiful. Like this is a beautiful career. Cause I always saw cooking as a career, you know? And even like back then, like my parents were like, no, you want to do something else? I was like, no, no, this is a career, and it's a serious career. I think in baking, I saw reflected all the things I love, you know? Like I realized in baking, you can take an ingredient and shape it any way you want, you know? Where on cooking, you can do so much with a piece of meat. So that's when I started like, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take the challenge. If I'm gonna be in pastry, I'm gonna be the best pastry chef, and just jump on it, you know, and learn and started baking and started baking. Like I started baking. I never did kind of like home baking. Like I did it when I was young. Like at home, I was always like kind of in the kitchen, but professionally, it was like in a kitchen. So
so what did you make at Pujol in the pastry station? I mean, I know that it's one of the world's 50 best restaurants and has several Michelin stars. And so how did you, you
I was
know,
doing the bread there. I started doing the bread
oh,
program because I wanted them to hire me, and the bread baker was leaving.
oh,
And I thought, well, this is the perfect opportunity for me. So I started learning all the bread program. And when the bread baker left, I was like, chef, let me do it, let me do it, let me do it, let me do it. I can do it. I learned. And of course I didn't know. Back then I remember like going home and still figuring like, why is my bread not rising, or why is, you know, it's I think it's an art and it's a craft that takes you to like do it by repetition, and it takes a lot of like observation and realize it, and one day it clicks. One day you're like, I understand bread, I understand butter, I understand sugars, I understand caramels, but it takes time. It takes time. I thought back then I could eat the world, you know, but little by little.
so how, I mean, what kinds of breads did you make there? Because I know that, did you make tortillas also or?
No, no, tortilla is actually I love masa. Masa is my passion now. No, back then we were doing, it was actually very like French inspired breads. I think
Oh,
there was a time where Mexican cooking didn't felt like it had the stage that it has now. It's taken, I think, many years of many professionals and many chefs that have traveled to other countries, or that we have traveled to other countries and gone back to realize that, you know, the power that Mexican food has. And I think back then, like any cuisine, we were trying to still do a little like uh take French influences and translate it like that. So I think the bread program, we definitely had some like Mexican breads, like pan de pulque. It's made with a fermented drink of the water that comes from the agaves, the magueys. But
mhm.
we also had baguette, and we had like a pan de peas, and we had like our menu was very French focused, you know. But that changed. That changed. Actually, I don't think there's bread service right now. And then I think that idea that we needed French in a dinner, we realized, or it translated into like corn, you know. I think in my years later, and when I moved to New York, because from Mexico City I moved to New York City, just starting the idea of corn, you know. Like I think once I moved to New York City, you miss a tortilla so much. And I started when I was at Empellon working with Alex Tupac. He's an
Mhm.
amazing pastry chef. We realized like, oh wait, there's nothing, you know, there's nothing gluten can do that corn cannot do. So we started actually, the first experiments were like, how do we treat corn like our starch, you know? And that was our base. How much can we push it? Can we make pasta? Can we make, you know? And we replaced the idea of like, we just put ourselves like that constraint of like, how much can we do with masa? And back then it was so like I'm talking like 2013. It
Mhm.
was the idea of like, now we talk about nixtamalizing corn so often in restaurants. Like I think it's a granted thing. You go to a Mexican restaurant, you know, they are buying the corn fresh, cooking it, grinding it. Back then it did not exist. Like you would just have store bought tortillas in any Mexican restaurant. So it was kind of like a pioneer of how do we start actually getting corn from Mexico? How do we like, or corn local? There's an amazing variety of corns in the States, from Philly, from like Georgia, you know, from the South. New York,
Mhm.
we started getting corn from New York. And that's kind of when I got also obsessed with corn. and
Oh,
and,
cool.
and producing our own corn and always producing our own uh, treated like that, And I think when we open, now I'm the chef of Pascual in Washington D.C. When we opened Pascual, the first thought was like, we need to get our corn, cook it, and produce fresh tortillas. So every day we grind corn at the restaurant still, and it's my favorite time of the day because it smells so good when you get to grind it and cook the first tortilla.
Well, yeah, I mean, Cosme and Apayón, I mean, they were really pioneers in the, elevating Mexican food in New York. I live in New York, so I'm familiar with both of them.
Yes,
So,
yeah, and that was and now how many taquerias are in New York? Like, and all the
um,
taquerias are making their own corn. Like,
I
I
know,
love when people has access to better food, and sometimes we give it for granted, but like no, and that takes years of people experimenting in kitchens and looking for better ingredients. I love it. I love it that people have the access to heirloom corn in New York City, in California, in San Francisco. Like,
right. Well, so tell me about Pascual. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Pascual is the name is after the saint of cooks. In Mexico, in Puebla, we celebrate San Pascual, and Pascual is the saint of kitchens and cooks. So I wanted
oh,
to bring that name over, and energy of good luck for the restaurant. Pascual is a Mexican restaurant, a contemporary Mexican restaurant. We're in Capitol Hill. We're in the middle of a neighborhood. It's not a very like a we're kind of a little like neighborhood and destination place because there's not a lot of foot traffic, but our neighbors are so incredible and they're always supporting us since day
mm,
one. And we get a lot of like people that travel, from the city or from the DMV area or from New York to taste our food. Our motto at Pascual is um, how do we cook, we call it, I call it Mexico City when we open. And the reason that was, it wasn't heard that much like Mexico City cuisine, but my way was a better, the way to translate it, it was like, I'm from Mexico City and I see it as kind of like, and I live in New York City for like 11 years. So I didn't want to like kind of put the cooking in a certain area like Pacific or Oaxaca or all of that. I thought Mexico City, like New York, it's a melting pot where you can taste all the cuisines of Mexico, So just like New York City, you can take so many cuisines. So I thought like, Mexico City one is the food I know, it's the food I grew up eating, and we have access to all of it. So we didn't put ourselves into that in a bracket of what Mexican food was it. So we approach it more about ingredients. How do we get the best local ingredients, and we cook them we cook them with Mexican techniques.
and so you're doing more than pastry now. I mean, you're the executive chef, so you're doing savory items too, I imagine, and
Yes,
wait.
I became a chef now. No, when we started like the restaurant, I was gonna do pastry, and I was gonna do. I'm always like a little all over the place, like help everything, from playlist through image. Like restaurants are a beautiful creative room where there's so many things you can tap on and get better at.
Yes.
And I thought like, I'm gonna be in the kitchen, but then we really needed like a chef, and I just little like honestly it was very organic that I started like cooking and cooking and my team is awesome. So yeah, I'm the chef there now. I love
Uh,
it.
and you never went to culinary school, right? You're all
No, I went to culinary school in Mexico for like 2 months, and then I got myself a job in a good kitchen. So then I was like, "Ugh."
that's a better training ground, I'm sure.
it was it
So,
was it was a good training ground.
yeah. So what are some of the signatures you introduced at Pascual? Both on
Yes.
dessert side and, the savory side.
A ver, what we have some dishes that we haven't taken off the menu since we opened.
Mhm.
What about, I don't know, I can talk about on the dessert side. I think we have a buñuelo. Buñuelo is this like it's like a fried rosette, kind of like a
Right.
Danish fried rosette. We use a mold, and then we toss on like cinnamon and sugar. It's a dish I kind of sometimes want to take off just because like we've been having since day one. And then we serve it with Mexican chocolate sauce and cajeta, that is caramelized
Mm,
goat's milk.
mhm,
It's a dish I sometimes think about taking off, but like I think
mhm.
guests could not like it. It's like a perfect like I think sometimes in restaurants you have to have those dishes that to like move the conversation forward, dishes that people associate with. So it looks kind of like, no, it feels that you're eating a churro, you know? So
Right.
for guests, they can have that same experience, but in a different form. So you're like, okay, I love it. Let me try another dessert, you know? So buñuelo covers that little part of like, you know, you're still, you know what you're having, just you're being a little more adventurous, you know, or you're trying something different and getting to taste more Mexican techniques or Mexican food without knowing, you know, or without
Mhm.
seeing it. So I love the buñuelo. And we also have these fideos. It's vermicelli noodles that we
Mhm.
cook with a mushroom cream and with la coche
Oh,
and black garlic.
yeah.
So good.
And so, are you doing anything special for the holidays, like any holiday baking or desserts that you're introducing?
Yes. We just passed Day of the Dead. For us, the holidays start on November 2nd for Day of the Dead. And we did pan de muerto. That is one of my favorites. It's like orange blossom brioche shaped like
Oh,
skulls that it gets tossed in like sugar and it changes what you can toss it on. We started with that, and then right now we're all crazy over apples and pumpkins. We have a pumpkin flan right now on the menu with piloncillo and pasilla chile. That is this chile from, or pasilla oaxaqueña. That is this chile from Oaxaca, from La Sierra, that it's
uh-huh.
smoke over wood. So it's almost like
Mhm.
vanilla like, you know? It has that
Right.
smoke, but it has that like wood, like wine, you know, porto. Like it's I love it's my favorite chile. So we're making a flan with that. And I know we're gonna have like we're trying to put an apple tartar theme, but like a Mexican style.
Mm.
Um, and we're definitely like I'm very into drinks lately.
Mm.
So atoles that are drinks that are thickened with masa. I love it. We're testing one with guavas, so fresh guavas, and then we thicken it with a little bit with masa, and it's gonna be like a drink.
Wow, that sounds great. And how about on the savory side? Are there any things that you couldn't take off the menu, because everyone loves them so much?
I think the fideos are savory. I don't think I can take those
Oh,
off right now. Or we also have a salad. It's chayote salad. Chayote is
uh-huh.
this veggie, that it usually gets eaten cooked. Like it gets treated like a potato.
Right.
Um and it's sadly because like it's always overcooked. You know when you're growing up and your parents make you like those overcooked asparagus. Like I
Yeah.
grew up with like overcooked chayotes, and they're
Uh-huh.
usually just smothered with crema and like cheese on top. And when we opened Pascual, I was like, no, I bet there's a better way. I bet there's a better way. So the way we do it now, we actually serve it raw. So we just cut it
Mm.
super thin, like strips, and we mix it with Asian pears. So when you're biting, you don't, it's just crunchy and there's some acidity and there's some like earthy. So you don't know what you're having. And it's chayote Asian pears. And we make a sunflower vinaigrette for it, like a sunflower
Mm.
dressing.
Right.
um, it's so good. It's so fresh. Like it goes well with like I love veggies. I love veggies. We always have veggies in the menu, but I think when you're having like some rich, like we have a lamb neck barbacoa. That also we had since the beginning. We have a lamb neck barbacoa that I feel like that's the perfect pairing. If you can have this like meaty dish with beans and on the side this like thing that cleans your palate,
Mm.
you enjoy food so much more. Or you can get taste like all the chiles or all the complexity of Mexican food.
Yeah, it sounds great, like a great combination for sure. So tell me a little bit. I think the role of pastry chef has evolved, especially since the pandemic. It's changed. Some restaurants aren't hiring pastry chefs anymore. They're like outsourcing to bakeries and that kind of thing. So, how do you think the role has, changed, and how can pastry chefs kind of reinvent themselves so that they can get jobs?
Look, this is a subject I love talking about because it's a subject I've lived through, and I think um sometimes now with social media, like we see techniques and we see all these dishes, and but because I think I've been cooking for a little bit, I can trace them back to where they come from, And when I moved to New York City, I was like 19 years old. It was 2011, and I think
Wow.
it was like that golden time for pastry chefs. I moved because I wanted to work with pastry chef. It was like you knew the pastry chefs more than you knew the chef sometimes, or the pastry chef image was just as important as the chef, you know? And we could not conceive a fine dining restaurant without that duality of the chef and the pastry chef, because they both bring so much, you know, and it was so appreciated. And I think just cost of everything has changed so much that I also saw it switching to like that part of like, hey, suddenly the pastry chef it's not affordable, you know, or like, and then you would see chefs trying to do pastries. And I do think, and this might be controversial, I think chefs can do beautiful pastries. I think we saw it like everything becoming the same for a little bit in like the industry. Everything became like pot de creme, and everything become like a custard, or everything become like a chocolate ganache with a little bit of crumble, you know. But like
Right.
it was what it was. It was what it was. But then you could see restaurants that had a pastry chef how more well-rounded were, or how better, and I see it internally how good the teams when there's a pastry chef, how much they grow, you know. For me I had to adapt personally, but I've also seen I had the inspiration for me to adapt. I also had the inspiration of, I think all the pastry chefs that we know end up being super successful. Like I look out to Albert Adria, you know, he has so many restaurants in Spain, and Ferran stopped having restaurants. I look at Alex Tupac, like he has all these restaurants, you know, like because he decided to take his techniques and move it forward, you know.
Right.
So I think the beauty of pastry chefs or bakers is that we do a lot of things without realizing. And I think that's what I've learned these last 2 years. It's kind of the confidence in that, maybe because I learned a lot in pastry and I can apply that knowledge into the savory side too. You know,
Of course.
we we can season as well. We have the techniques, we have the elegance, we have the discipline, you know. We know how to build teams, so we just gotta like scale it up, you know, and not be afraid of doing it. And I would love, I mean, my dream is to get back to my little corner and do ice creams all day. That's my happy place. If you can put
Yeah.
me somewhere, you know, I would love it. But also things change, you know, and growing takes a little bit of those challenges. So I think you just take the bull, or at least that was for me. I just had to jump in it and do your best possible, and then you realize there's actually like there's a lot of things that relate. Like a good example for me, I think our Garmages station, like our coal station, I think is
Mhm.
the hardest because it's the closest to pastry, so it's the one we do the most the more techniques and the more, you know, sauces and the most garnishes and the most everything. And I'm like, you're just doing pastry right now, you know, you might not know cook.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I think also, I mean, in New York anyway, so many pastry chefs have opened bakeries now. There are so many more bakeries. I don't know if that's true in Washington too, but
Yes, no, and no, that's what I'm saying. Like I think bakers can sustain a restaurant or I also I work when I was in Cosme, I realized like, hey, so many people come to this restaurant for the corn husk meringue, you know. And that's just one example of many. Like Le
Mhm.
Bernardin still has the egg, you know, the classic egg custard. Like when I was working at Lutèce here in DC, we had the honeycomb semifreddo, you know. Like desserts can become or have the power to become so iconic that people will travel just to eat desserts. And
Yes.
that also, like a lot of bakers are independent, and you see, I also saw that in pandemic. I think bakers started like doing recipes and blogs and writing on Substack, and like, you know,
Mhm.
we don't stop, you know. So I think the idea of just your pad is only in a kitchen, that's out the door, you know. There's
Yeah.
many paths now that you can pursue baking and cooking, and be successful at it.
Yeah. No, definitely. And so do you think you would, I mean, what's next for Pascual? Do you think you'll open another one, or do you think you'll get into a bakery of your own
I
someday?
don't know. I do want to open a bakery. To be honest, yeah, we've been talking about it since the restaurant has a little side window. The dream has always to open a bakery there. I love Mexican breakfast. I think breakfast is so delicious, and part
Ooh,
of it is like the cornbread and the conchas and the coffee. Like Mexican breakfast, I don't know. I think it translates. Some cultures do breakfast better than others, you know? Like no shade, but French, is different. Italian breakfast is different, but Mexican breakfast is eggs, is sauce. It's
Oh,
you can eat a lot of good things. So I definitely would love to explore that part of a Mexican bakery, how it could look. We're trying to open a bar too. We just opened a new restaurant called Maison, and it's a French wine bar in Adams
oh,
Morgan. So we're being busy.
yeah, it sounds that way. So are you serving food at the wine bar too?
Yes, 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 yes. It's a full menu. It's a wine bar, but it has a full menu, and the food is delicious. We have these
Mm.
shoe buns that are filled with like banana ice cream and rum caramel,
Oh,
and we just put a Basque cheesecake,
oh,
with Savagnin syrup. It's super good. So no, there's a lot of good things happening there too. Just like come try the restaurants. I think we have 3 places, and our company has 4 lapis, and all of the restaurants. We're right now, honestly, running restaurants in Washington D.C. is very hard. There's so many things happen. I think this whole year we've been struggling with like many changes and many any out of our control problems. And out of that, I think everybody's cooking, and our industry is beautiful. And I think me and my chef friends were like, non-stopping to try to make experiences for guests and try to forget about everything that's happening outside. So just don't stop eating out. Go eat out. My team is
oh.
incredible. I think I want to definitely give a shout out to my team because they're amazing. And I couldn't do it. Yes, I can do a lot of things, but part of that I'm a great chef is because I have an amazing team. So Brandon, Marisa, and Chef Miriam, and Kai, and Kieran, and Daller, they all helped me so much to be better.